So it was an epic journey north for the Bears on Sunday, and unfortunately they weren't able to come away from Whitehaven with a win, even though they did scare the natives a bit. We've got the story of all that, plus loads more. This is the world's greatest podcast about the Coventry Bears. This is Bear Necessities. Welcome to Bear Necessities, your favourite podcast about the Coventry Bears. We're sponsored by York's Tim. We live at covbearspodcast.com. We're at covbearspodcast on Twitter. You can listen to the show on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and on YouTube too. And as always, we're very happy to be here. I'm one of your co-hosts, Dave Musson, and joining me as always is former Bears fullback and my co-pilot, Craig Cathcart. Craig, how are you doing?
Yes, I'm good, mate. I'm good. Didn't get to the game at the weekend due to other commitments, but overall I'm good.
Good stuff. So lots to talk about in this show. We will cover the Bears' trip to Whitehaven, which unfortunately resulted in a 32-18 defeat. Neither of us were able to make the long trip north, but we will cover it for you, and we do have the post-match reactions of Bears head coach Tom Tsang. We're at the halfway point of the season, so we're going to give a quick summary of where we think we're at so far, maybe even give the team a bit of a grade so far and pick out our favourite players. We'll have a very quick look ahead to this weekend's return to Cumbria to go and play Workington. But before all that, couple of bits of big Bears news. So, Craig, shall we start with the really positive news or the slightly less good news from a Bears point of view? What do you reckon?
Let's start with the less good news and finish on a positive.
Okay, I like it. I like your thinking. So the less good news, you may well have seen this if you've been keeping an eye on the Bears' social feeds over the last couple of days. But halfback Nick Newman, and fan favourite really, has been transferred to Newcastle Thunder. He's gone with immediate effect. Obviously a real shame. This is what Bears CEO Alan Robinson had to say about it on the Bears website. He said, "Nick has had a great influence on our season so far, and we are always proud of players who represent our club, and I will never hold a player back from opportunities to better themselves and enhance their careers. This is one of those opportunities, and he leaves with our full support. We still continue to develop players and enhance our contribution to the game, and we will now focus on finishing our season in the strongest way possible." And he also makes a point of saying how brilliant Newcastle Thunder have been throughout this process. And Thunder themselves announced it with a quite silly Love Island themed video, which is worth checking out on their Twitter just for the silliness of it. Shows a few of Nick's tries from when he was playing Australia. Funnily enough, they didn't include the try that he scored, the sensational try he scored against Thunder earlier in the season.
Which was the try of the week on the R-League app as well, wasn't it?
Indeed it was. You'd have thought if any of the one would have made Newcastle Thunder fans remember who Nick Newman was, it would be that one. But I suppose I can understand why they didn't include it.
I have to say as well, I've never ever watched Love Island, so I didn't get the reference on the video. But yeah.
yeah, same here. I've never watched it, but it's one of those things. I think younger people than me and you, Craig, will probably understand it a bit more. But in terms of this transfer, Craig, I mean, obviously it's a real shame, and Nick has had such a positive impact on the pitch this season, and he's been a real pleasure to deal with off the pitch. But from what it sounds like, it just sounds like it was a too good an opportunity for Nick, and a pretty good opportunity for the Bears in terms of receiving a transfer fee and all of stuff like that. So it's one of those, isn't it? It's a real shame, but he leaves with our blessing and our thanks for a cracking contribution, I guess.
Yeah, he was sensational in a couple of games, particularly that Newcastle game, and the game against Workington as well at Broad Street. He was sensational that day. He's an excellent player. There's no two ways about it. He's for a halfback, he's very good defensively as well. And he had a great start to the year in a Bears shirt. But the statement from Alan suggests a pragmatic approach has been taken by the club, and that's the way you've got to do it. If an opportunity comes up for a player which is good for that player, and by the looks of it, I mean, he'll likely be pretty much almost a full-time player up there. that's a great opportunity for him. Newcastle are a club, very ambitious club, with great facilities, and they're doing a lot in the northeast to grow the game. Not a bad city to live in either. So it's definitely an opportunity for him. And as Alan says, he doesn't want to hold players back. The Bears are a club which nurtures talent and gives players an opportunity to. I mean, a number of the squad at the moment are players that have had an opportunity to come into the game or come back into the game that might not otherwise be playing rugby league. So, the Bears have firmly positioned themselves as a club that players can come in and get game time and get experience and if necessary, if the move is right, move on to other things. We've seen that with Jason Bass up at York as well. I mean, Jason showed an incredible amount of loyalty to the Bears, but when the time was right and the move was right, that's very important. Is it being the right move for the player? That then the club, won't stand in their way.
Yeah,
it's a real shame. I'll be interested to see if the Bears do anything to bring in any replacements. There's a couple of players in the squad that have played very well in the halfbacks. We'll just have to see. My own view is possibly a little bit light in that area, but we'll see what happens.
Yes, we definitely will. So again, thanks to Nick for a brilliant contribution to the first half of the season. Good luck for Newcastle. Just remember how nice you enjoyed playing for the Bears when Newcastle play Bears later in the season. And if Nick is playing against the Bears, then maybe just forget your kicking boots that day. That's all I'd say as a favour, as a passing favour. So let's move on to the more positive news. In terms of Bears players being involved with international rugby league. So the England Universities squad was announced earlier this week. Obviously, we know from last year that the Bears are very familiar with the university setup. And this year, Dan Gover, Errol Carter and Jacob Jones have all made the England Universities squad. So terrific stuff there. Well done to all three of those players. And Craig, once again, it's just testament to this approach that the Bears are taking in terms of nurturing talent within the university's game and giving them the opportunity to test themselves in League One and get the attention of the international selections as well.
Yeah, and Universities Rugby League, the international game in Universities Rugby League is a very, very high standard. This is an opportunity for those players to develop themselves further. Again, I think there was a piece put out by York City Knights where they talked about Jason Bass and Marcus Stock. Obviously, Jason was at the Bears and Marcus has been on dual reg at the Bears this year. Those are two players that played internationally for England students last year. And as I said, it gives them that extra experience, gives them another springboard in which to realise their talents. And, it's brilliant news for Bears players to be involved in that. And I'm very, very glad that the club have taken the approach of encouraging players to go for those opportunities and take them. It may mean, like last season, a few players missed Bears games, but in terms of their overall development, it's the best thing for them.
Definitely so. So well done to those three players. And as you'll hear later in our interview with Tom Tsang, it sounds like there might also be Bears players involved with the Ireland setup as well, which haven't quite been announced yet at the time of recording. But again, just terrific to see some of the Bears lads getting on the international stage. So that's the news done. Let's turn our attention to last Sunday's game where the Bears travelled up to Cumbria and unfortunately came away on the back of a 32-18 defeat away at Whitehaven. And in many ways, a bit like the game against Whitehaven last year, there were moments throughout this game, refreshing Twitter feeds and thinking, hang on, the Bears are going to do it here. But unfortunately, they weren't able to pull through and win. So the game actually started with Whitehaven scoring twice in the opening 15 minutes to go to an 8-0 lead. But then the Bears came roaring back. Nick Newman scored what is now his final try for the Bears, converted it himself, added a goal, and then converted a try from Sam Davis just before half-time as well, which meant that the Bears went into the break 14-8 up and everyone was starting to get very, very excited. But unfortunately, Whitehaven came out for the second half, roaring out of the traps and scored 5 unanswered tries to really take the game away from the Bears. Although the Bears did hit back, they did have the final say of the match with another try from Elliot Hall, taking it to 32-18 as a final score. We will chat about the game very shortly in a moment, but first, let's hear the post-match reaction of head coach Tom Tsang. So Tom, tell me about Sunday then. It was another bit of an epic journey up to Whitehaven, and another one that kept Bears fans on the edge of their seats or refreshing Twitter feeds, but ultimately, unfortunately, no victory to come home with. How did you find it on Sunday?
First of all, I got to praise my players' sort of resilience and effort levels and attitude. We weren't happy with how we performed against Crusaders, and we felt that we turned a corner in many ways after the Oldham game, obviously coming off the back of a good win against Workington, but we let ourselves down against Crusaders, and so the key thing was to bounce back and make sure that our energy, our enthusiasm and willingness to work hard in defence was the best it had been this season. It was close, especially considering the number of injuries that we've been unfortunate to have recently. So that on that side of it, very happy with the performance. I thought it did take us sort of 5 or 10 minutes of the game to get into the swing of things, and we were caught a little bit flat-footed in the first 10 minutes. But the half an hour after that opening period, I thought we were hands down the better team, and the scoreboard reflected that. And I thought we were putting pressure on Whitehaven. They put quite a bit of ball to the floor and made a few errors, but I'm very confident that's down to our defence and pressing hard and putting their skill under pressure. Second half, we got a little bit loose, and Whitehaven, to their credit, they regathered themselves and composed themselves and started to put together a few good sets. And I think the turning point was when their star player Dion A came off the bench. He really turned the momentum for them and made 2 or 3 really crucial contributions, and I thought that was a really well-timed substitution for them. They brought him on against when we were a little bit tired in that middle of the second half, and he probably had the hand in at least 3 tries. So that was probably the difference between the two teams. Really, one player I'm going to say. So obviously it's encouraging, but we still need to learn and work out how to finish these games, but we'll be better for the experience.
And I know you wouldn't want to use it as an excuse, but it's difficult to get away from the fact that Whitehaven is just so far away in terms of it makes it such a long day, and it is a long journey to get there. And from what I've been able to glean about what it's like up there, it can sometimes be a bit of a hostile environment. I mean, when the home team gets on a bit of a roll like they seem to in the second half there, does all of that play into your players, do you think? Does it make it a more difficult place to be trying to do what you want to do?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I think once you run onto the field, nothing else is in your mind. You're not thinking about the journey, you're not thinking about the crowd, etc. You're just focusing on the job at hand. What could happen is just physiologically, you're just a little bit tight because of the journey, and that can just take a little bit longer to get out. So we need to look at our preparation with what we're doing in terms of breaking up the journey, making sure that we're having a good warm up, which negates some of those things. But realistically, we can't use it as an excuse. It's the same for other teams who travel up there. It's the same for Whitehaven Workington when they travel away from home. So and they don't use it as an excuse. So I don't think we can legitimately do that either. So yeah, we just need to look at the way that we prepare and the way that we enter games.
Yeah. So what about standout performers from your guys on Sunday? Was there anyone in particular you'd want to sing the praises of?
I thought Nick Newman was his usual self in terms of really controlled the team, was very creative, scored a try himself, had a hand in one of the others, and yeah, he was up there, one of our best. I thought one player that really needed to get some praise was Errol Carter. He's been out of the team for a few games. He came in on the wing, and it's difficult sometimes to have an impact on the wing, but he was probably our best player, and I in fact gave him our man of the match after the match. he 2 or 3 try-saving tackles, some really very difficult takes under high ball, under immense pressure. Good, busy work. So he was very good, and it's very competitive in that position. We've got Hayden Freeman, Reece Rance, and Errol and Elliot all pushing for those back 3 positions, and he's put his name right back in there. So that's very good and very, very pleasing for us.
And of course, he's followed that up with a call-up for England universities, along with Jacob Jones and Dan Gover. You must be pleased to see more of your guys getting that opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always a good thing. We said it last year when we had quite a few guys away with representing their countries. It's just a great experience for them, and big congratulations. I know the squads haven't fully been announced yet, but we've got a few guys in the Irish team as well. So we're very proud of that.
Great stuff. Now, you mentioned earlier in the interview the fact that you have picked up a few injuries of late, and I know there are a few sort of dual reg players came in last Sunday to help fill the squad a bit. Where are you at with injuries looking ahead to this weekend?
We're still struggling, I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to try and sugarcoat it. Ben Gray's out for the season with an ACL tear. He's had surgery, and he's just on the path to recovery. Ollie Purslow had an MCL strain, and he's been out for about 7 weeks now, and he's probably got another week or 2 before he can be fully considered. Dan Gover has had a knee injury as well. He's back available for selection, but obviously because he's had such a long time out, his match fitness and sharpness that he needs to get on under his belt in training. He won't be too far away. He'll be in consideration this weekend, but obviously we just need to look at his match fitness and see where he is. Peter Ryan picked up a shoulder injury against Crusaders. He was out for the weekend. He's touch and go for Workington, but we'll see how he goes. Other than that, there's just little knocks and niggles, and we've had a little bit of illness as well in the camp. So, yeah, we're doing it tough, but we're very fortunate to have good dual reg partners in London Broncos, and obviously we've got a good relationship with a couple of other clubs as well that have allowed us to bring guys in. But as best as possible, we prefer to use our own players, but if we need to fall back onto dual reg, we will.
Yeah, and I guess if you do have any from the Broncos coming up this weekend, I mean, after what Broncos did weekend just gone against the league leaders, they must those players must be full of confidence. So it'd be a nice energy boost for your camp, I guess. Yeah, definitely. I mean, any of the players that we get from there have been absolutely spot on in terms of their attitude, and they're just wanting to put as good a performance in as they can to try and force their way into that team ultimately. So we know that we're going to get good players from them and fit players. They're in full-time environment, obviously. So we're very lucky to have that to call on. So yeah. So you've probably only just recovered from the journey on Sunday, but you get to do it all over again this coming weekend to go and play Workington and a chance to do a double over a Cumbrian side. What are your thoughts ahead of this weekend's game? Well, it's going to be a tough one. They whenever we play these teams, these northern teams, one of our biggest pluses for us is that it can take us lightly a little bit. And I know that Workington won't be doing that. Obviously, since we've beaten them, they'll be doing their absolute utmost to get that back on us and maybe show that was just a one-off performance for them. But we know that we've got a big challenge ahead, but we know that we can compete. We know that we can score points. We've got a lot of talented and dangerous attacking players. The main thing, which is something that we've been searching for all season, is just consistency, and that's something that's not just sort of within the 80 minutes, which is huge, but it's just like game to game, being able to get up week in, week out, and make sure that we turn up to each game with the same attitude to work hard. And the guys have got that, but obviously it's difficult to maintain. Yeah, okay. And just lastly, we've now reached the halfway point for the season. So you played everyone once, 10 games in, 3 victories already. How do you rate where you're at so far in the season, and what are you looking for from your players as we go into the second half? Obviously, we're happy with the wins that we've got, and I think they're well deserved. I must say I'm a little bit disappointed that
the two ones that stand out to me are the Scholars game and the Crusaders game at home. I thought we had a real opportunity to win those games, and if we could have come into the halfway point, sort of 5 wins, 5 losses, that would have probably been our objective and our aim met. So I think that's got to be what we were looking for the second half of the season, is to get sort of a 50% win record as a minimum, and kick on from there. If we can do better than that, then that puts us in a picture of potentially playoffs, because every team seems to be still beating each other on any given week. So it's still wide open. No team is racing away with it yet, and we think that we're more than capable of putting in a bit of a charge if we can just find that consistency that I mentioned before.
Great stuff. Well, Tom, thanks as always for joining us on the podcast. Safe travels back up to Cumbria again on Sunday, and I'll speak to you soon.
My pleasure, Dave. Thank you.
So thanks to Tom for joining us as always. Craig, neither of us were able to make it up to Cumbria for the game, but it feels like another one of those games we talked about a lot on the podcast, where there was real moments there where the Bears showed what they can do, and they almost teased us into thinking they were going to get that win, that away win, but ultimately it just wasn't to be, was it?
Yeah, I mean, I was massively positive at going in leading at half-time at Whitehaven. I mean, that was such a brilliant first-half effort, and by all accounts, it was due to brilliant play from the Bears and defensive work and putting Haven under pressure. I did worry that they were going to come out firing in the second half, and they did that. And it looks like the Bears tired a little bit from about the 60-minute point onwards, but still a very, very good result. They scored the final try of the game as well, and we've really got to look at the progress that the squad have made in the last couple of years. I mean, they went to Whitehaven towards the end of last season and really should have won the game, to be honest. And they've gone up there again to the league leaders and pushed them for large parts of the game, and come away with a really respectable result against them. I mean, Whitehaven, I think, have won about 7 in a row now, something like that. They're clear, 3 points clear at the top of the league, and they've beaten teams by much bigger margins than that at home this year. And I mean, they look the real deal. They look at the moment, present on current form, they look like promotion favourites. I think there'll be a late surge from one or two other teams potentially, but that's a really good result away. It's just a shame we've got a lot of these. I hope the lads don't let their heads drop, because over the last couple of months, there's been some really good away performances where the Bears have pushed teams, for a good 60, 70 minutes and not quite got a result in the end. But they shouldn't, they should certainly take a lot of heart from the progress that's been shown year on year. I mean, there was as good as last season was, and as good as some of the results were last season, there was quite a number of away performances where the Bears got beaten handsomely really on the day. But they've been competitive in every single away game so far this year, and certainly surprised a few teams with how good they are.
Definitely. And of course, talking about last season, if you want to relive last season, then don't forget to pre-order the book that I've written about last season that is raising money for the Bears and for Rugby League Cares. Do go to covbearspodcast.com/book. Totally should have mentioned that at the start of the show, but I'm the world's worst salesman, particularly of my own things. So do go and check that out. I totally take your point, Craig, on wanting the guys in the team to keep their heads held high, because we've mentioned on this podcast before that first away win in the north of England is not far off of the Bears, and one of these days, one of these performances, we're going to be talking about a win. We're not just going to be talking about 60 minutes of great performance and then ultimately being edged out, and isn't it great to see the progress and stuff. It's going to click at some point, isn't it? And they just need to keep believing in themselves, believing in the structures that the coaches send them out onto the pitch with, and just having faith that it's going to happen.
Absolutely. I mean, they certainly are. I mean, I've been to a few away games this year, and all of the chat after the game has been about the improvement shown by the Bears over the last couple of years. You can see it in the results. and the competitiveness in the games. I mean, in all honesty, the Bears went away to some games in the last couple of seasons, and there was very little chance of them winning a game. But now they go into every away game knowing that they have a very good chance of winning that game if things go their way. And
it's the beauty of League One this season as well. Anyone can beat anyone. So I guess, again, that's another reason why I can't help but feel like, at some point in the second half of this season, if the Bears do get an away win against a Northern team, I wouldn't be surprised if it happens this year, because the league feels so open this year. And even though the Bears, at the moment, they're sort of sat on 3 wins from 10 games, there's nothing to suggest that they won't be able to put a run on in the second half of the season and end up pushing for a playoff place, is it? Because you just don't know who's going to beat who at the current rate.
No, I think if Bear, I think Tom alluded to it in his interview that certainly for him and for me as well, the disappointments were the losing in the last minute against Scholars, and putting in that relatively poor performance against Crusaders. Yeah. 2 games really that the Bears should have been winning. Yeah. That would have put the Bears on 5-5, and if they'd repeated that over the second half of the season, there's every likelihood they would have been in the playoffs. And then once you get there, who knows what will happen. So I think there's a bit of work to do for the Bears to do that. But I think when you look at the league table and you look at the team in third place having lost 4 or 5 games, then anyone putting a string of results together will surge up the table. I mean, Scholars did it, didn't they? They won 5 in a row and went from being near the bottom to being top. So anyone that puts a string of results together will surge up the table, and there's no reason, based on the performances that we've seen to date, there's no reason to think that the Bears can't do that. They need a bit of momentum. They need to, which has been difficult with the way that the fixtures have been laid out. But we saw it last season, didn't we, when the Bears went and won 4 in a row. Once you get that momentum and your confidence is up and all the players are playing as well as they can, then there's no reason why you can't do it.
Yeah, definitely. Well, that feels like a good point then to come into our sort of mini review of the season. So we are at the halfway point. The Bears have played everybody once. So I guess in terms of this, I don't want to spend too long on this, but in terms of summarising where we are halfway through the season, Craig, I was curious to hear maybe a couple of your picks for Player of the Year so far, and maybe a grade for the Bears in terms of how they've done so far. So like A+, C-, somewhere, whatever. I'm happy to go first if you want, because I've already made some notes, or if you want to jump in.
Yeah, no, you go first.
Okay. Well, I've deliberately left out one name off my Player of the Year list because I've got a feeling you will mention him. So if there's one obvious one missing when you hear me go through my list, then it's because I'm assuming you're going to mention him. But I'll give an honourable mention to Nathan Conroy. I think he has been superb from hooker and just really driven the guys up the pitch at every opportunity. Kadeem Williams has really impressed me, not only in attack but particularly in defence. But I think my standout player so far, we've already mentioned him in this episode, is Jacob Jones. I think he has been phenomenal. I've never seen him do short of a 9 out of 10 so far this season. I think the impact he's had has been sensational, and him playing alongside Kieran Shearer and Chris Barrett in the forward pack just gives the Bears so much energy and so much grit. I just feel far happier when knowing that Jacob Jones is on the pitch, because I think he's always a threat in both attack and defence. And for an overall grade, I think a B+ so far.
Right, well, I've written down a list of players and it's quite a long list, and I'm not going to go necessarily through all of them, but looking at when I've looked at the squad over the last the last few games, I could certainly put a case forward for pretty much most of the squad. Nick Newman would have been in there. He's been fantastic. He's obviously earned a move elsewhere, and good luck to him. As I said, it'd be interesting to see who comes into that position and fills that hole at number 7. For me, though, I guess the standout player so far this season, it is purely because of his ability to score tries, is Elliot Hall.
That's why I didn't mention him.
But not only that, I think the Bears have had some very good try-scoring fullbacks over the last couple of years, but players that weren't necessarily solid under a high ball, possibly prone to mistakes from time to time. Elliot has shown that he's capable under a high ball. His pace is just something else. I mean, he's got phenomenal pace, and he pretty much scores every game, and you can't really ask much more than that from a fullback. I mean, he's top try scorer this season. I think he's on 10 now for the season. Mm-hmm. If he keeps going, we're only halfway through the season. I mean, potentially, if he stays fit and keeps going the way he is, then he has the opportunity to get a record number of tries in a season for a Bears player. Yep. He's doing phenomenally well. In terms of other people, I wouldn't disagree with your pick of Jacob. I think, and as you said, for me, an honourable mention is Nathan Conroy. I love watching him play. I think he's fantastic. Really clever player, makes things happen. Really makes things tick, and when he's playing well, the Bears are playing well. He's just been fantastic. I think for me as well, a couple of other players to mention. I can't not. I'm going to put them in as a duo because they often get overlooked, just mainly because of the length of time they've been at the club. But Kieran Sherritt and Chris Barrett really are the backbone of the Bears team, and particularly since Chris moved into loose forward. I mean, those guys are just fantastic players. There's no two ways about it. As is overlooked, mainly because their performances are always of such a high standard that they don't necessarily stand out on a week-to-week basis just because they put in those high-level performances every single week. And I think really looking forward to seeing them in the second half of the season. I think they've been superb so far this year. Mm-hmm. One other honourable mention for me, he's a player that, again, gets overlooked, and quite often he's coming off the bench, but he never, ever takes a step back. And he is 100% committed. One of the most committed players that you'll see in the squad is Harry Kaufman. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Started last weekend, and by all accounts played very, very well. He's just exactly what you want, particularly for players coming off the bench. He's going to run it in hard. He's going to work his socks off, and he does it week in, week out. I think there's a reason why he makes the squad every week, and that's because of his commitment. And he should be certainly applauded for that.
Definitely. And how about your grade for the team so far then?
I think it's been a little bit up and down because there's been some fantastic performances, and then one or two, as I say, the two games I mentioned where the Bears really should have won them. So I think it's a B minus maybe, but had they won those two extra games, you're looking at an A.
Yeah.
When I looked at the start of the season, I sort of looked through the fixture list and picked out potential winning games and what might happen. And looking at things positively, I was thinking we could potentially get 5 wins out of 5 or 5 wins out of 10 in the first 10, in the first half of the season. Mm-hmm. I think that's from what Tom says, that was the aim, the club. So if they can get 5 out of 10 in the second half of the season, then it would be considered a really fantastic season. It's already been. I still think that this league's more competitive than it's ever been. There's less winnable games for expansion clubs like the Bears, with the likes of Oxford and Gloucester going. Mm-hmm. It's a really difficult league, and you can see that by the fact that everyone is beating each other, how competitive it is. So I'm really hoping that the lads can go into the second half of this season and finish really strongly.
Definitely. Good stuff. Well, for those of you listening, if you want to give us your grades for the team so far and your favourite players of the year so far, then do tweet us at Cov Bears Podcast. Let us know who you think has done the business on the pitch and how you think the team have gone. That's almost it for this week. But before we go, we should probably just have a quick look ahead to this weekend's game, the first game in the second half of the season. It's a trip back up to Cumbria to go and play Workington. And Craig, there's a chance here of the Bears doing the double over a northern side. It's going to be tough though, isn't it? I mean, Workington is not an easy place to go to.
No, it's not an easy place to go to. They've improved their form significantly since they played the Bears. I think they're improving week in, week out. So it'll definitely be a different Workington, a different proposition against Workington than it was down at Broad Street. But I think the fact still remains that if the Bears can really play to their ability and spread the ball like they did in the first game, then they've got every chance of getting a result. If they can maintain the performance that they put in against Whitehaven, then, as I said, they've got every chance of getting that result. It's going to be difficult, but I'm confident of the Bears coming away with the result.
Okay, let's have a prediction then. I'm also stupidly confident on this. Actually, I've got a bit of a buzz about me. I'm going for Bears by 1. What do you reckon?
I think there'll be one score in it, and I'm hoping it's the Bears. Well, no, I'm not just hoping. I'm confident it'll be the Bears. Good
stuff. Well, we'll see what happens. So that's about it for this week. Just a heads up for next week. We're not actually going to have an episode out next week because I'm off to try and get a suntan in Herefordshire, so that won't be happening. But I'm off on holiday for a week and won't really have means of recording. So what we'll do is we will be back the week after that. So as a sort of a dual episode, we will wrap up what happens at Workington and we will preview the home game against Doncaster, which of course is being streamed on the Our League app. So you'll be getting a week off from us, but do check out the Bears Twitter feed for live coverage during the game on Sunday, and do send them all your best wishes as they make that long trip north again, and give them lots of positive vibes to help them get that win and secure that double against Workington. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, make sure you order your copy of Forward, the book I've written about last season, which is being published to raise money for the Bears and for Rugby League Cares. You can find out more at covbearspodcast.com/book. And if you really want, you can trawl the archives of BBC Coventry and Warwickshire for their Sport at 6 show from a couple of weeks ago, where I was a guest, and a couple of other Rugby League podcasts as well, if you want to find out more information. But yes, we will be having a week off, but we will be back before you know it to round up what's going on and preview the rest of the season. Covbearspodcast.com is where you can find all our episodes. Covbears Podcast on Twitter. Don't forget to subscribe and tell a friend, all of that stuff. We're very grateful to York's Tim for his sponsorship as always. And Craig, I guess that's it. Another show done. Looking forward to seeing how the Bears get on as they head back to Cumbria this weekend.
Yes. Yeah. Cheers.